The most powerful leaders are human. Opening speech. For a long time, we've been sold the idea that powerful leaders are untouchable, that they always have answers, that they don't hesitate, don't doubt, and don't show emotion. We imagine leadership as confidence without cracks and authority without vulnerability. But the truth is, that kind of leadership doesn't inspire trust. It creates distance. The leaders who truly change lives aren't the ones who pretend to be perfect. They are the ones who are brave enough to be human. They admit when they don't know. They listen before they speak. They lead with empathy, not ego. Powerful leadership is not about control, it's about connection. And connection requires courage. It requires the willingness to be seen as you are, not as some polished version you think people expect. Today, we're going to talk about why the most powerful leaders are not the most flawless, but the most human. 6 key points of the speech. 1, humanity builds trust faster than authority. People don't trust titles, they trust people. When leaders show up as human, they create psychological safety. Admitting uncertainty, acknowledging mistakes, and showing genuine care tells others, you are safe here. Authority may command compliance, but humanity earns commitment. Trust is built when leaders replace fear with honesty and control with connection. 2, vulnerability is the courage to lead without armor. Vulnerability in leadership doesn't mean oversharing or weakness. It means leading without pretending. It means having the courage to say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to learn. Leaders who remove the armor allow creativity, innovation, and authenticity to thrive. Vulnerability invites others to bring their full selves to the table. 3, empathy is the leader's greatest strength. Empathy allows leaders to understand not just performance, but people. It helps them recognize burnout before breakdown, conflict before collapse, and fear before disengagement. Empathetic leaders don't lower standards, they raise trust. They listen deeply, respond thoughtfully, and lead in ways that honor human complexity. For imperfection makes leadership relatable. Perfection creates pressure. Imperfection creates belonging. When leaders admit they're learning, growing, and sometimes struggling, they normalize growth for everyone else. Relatable leaders don't lose respect, they gain it. They show that progress matters more than perfection, and that mistakes are part of meaningful work. 5, courageous leaders create safe spaces. The most powerful leaders create environments where people feel safe to speak up, disagree, and fail forward. Psychological safety doesn't happen by accident. It is intentionally modeled by leaders who choose openness over defensiveness. Safe spaces fuel innovation, honesty, and loyalty. When people feel safe, they show up fully. 6, humanity is the foundation of lasting impact. Results matter, but impact lasts longer. Leaders who lead with humanity shape cultures, not just outcomes. They leave behind teams that are stronger, more resilient, and more connected than before. Human leadership doesn't end when the leader leaves the room. It lives on in how people treat one another. Closing, power is not found in dominance. Strength is not found in silence. And leadership is not about being above others. It's about standing with them. The most powerful leaders don't lead from a pedestal. They lead from the heart. And that is how real change begins. Humanity builds trust faster than authority in many organizations and institutions. Leadership is still mistaken for authority. Titles, positions, and power structures are often seen as the primary way to gain respect and compliance. While authority can enforce rules and produce short-term results, it rarely creates trust. Trust is not commanded. It is cultivated, and the fastest way to cultivate trust is through humanity. People do not place their trust in job titles. They place it in character. A leader may have impressive credentials, but if they feel distant, unapproachable, or emotionally unavailable, people will hesitate to fully engage. When leaders show their human side by listening, acknowledging concerns, and admitting limitations, they signal safety. And safety is the foundation of trust. Human leadership begins with presence. It's the leader who truly listens rather than waiting to speak. It's the leader who notices when someone is struggling and chooses curiosity over judgment. These small human moments communicate something powerful. You matter here. Over time, these moments accumulate into trust that no policy or authority can replace. Authority often relies on fear, the fear of consequences, the fear of disapproval, the fear of failure. Fear may produce compliance, but it never produces commitment. Humanity, on the other hand, invites ownership. When people feel seen and respected, they willingly invest their energy, creativity, and loyalty. They don't just follow instructions, they believe in the mission. One of the most courageous acts a leader can take is admitting uncertainty. Saying, I don't know, or I made a mistake does not weaken authority, it strengthens credibility. It tells people that honesty matters more than ego. Leaders who can own their mistakes demonstrate integrity, and integrity is the currency of trust. Human leaders also understand that trust is built in small moments, not grand gestures. It's built when feedback is given with respect, when difficult conversations are handled with empathy, when promises are kept even when it's inconvenient. These moments show consistency between words and actions, and consistency is what makes trust endure. When leaders rely solely on authority, they create distance. When they lead with humanity, they create connection, and connection is what allows teams to weather uncertainty, conflict, and change together. In times of crisis, people don't look for the most powerful person in the room. They look for the most trustworthy one. Ultimately, leadership rooted in humanity creates environments where people feel safe to speak up, take risks, and grow. And in those environments, performance improves naturally, not because people are forced to deliver, but because they want to. Authority may open doors, but humanity is what keeps people walking through them together. Vulnerability is the courage to lead without armor. For generations, leadership has been associated with certainty, toughness, and emotional control. Leaders were expected to have all the answers, never show doubt, and keep their emotions carefully hidden. This belief created a culture of armor where leaders protect themselves by appearing invulnerable. But armor may create the illusion of strength. It also creates distance. Leading without armor requires courage, and that courage is called vulnerability. Vulnerability in leadership is often misunderstood. It is not about oversharing personal details or losing authority. It is about honesty, openness, and the willingness to show up without pretending. Vulnerable leaders are comfortable saying, I don't know yet, or I need help, or I was wrong. These statements do not diminish leadership. They deepen trust and credibility. When leaders wear armor, teams learn to do the same. People hide mistakes, suppress ideas, and avoid difficult conversations. Creativity shrinks. Innovation slows. Fear quietly takes over. Vulnerability breaks this cycle. When a leader models openness, it gives permission for others to speak honestly, take risks, and bring their full selves to work. Leading without armor also means embracing uncertainty. Leadership today rarely comes with clear answers or predictable outcomes. Vulnerability allows leaders to navigate uncertainty with curiosity rather than control. Instead of pretending to be certain, they invite collaboration. Instead of dictating solutions, they co-create them. This approach not only strengthens relationships, but also leads to better decisions. When there is also deep courage in acknowledging mistakes, leaders who own their missteps demonstrate accountability and integrity. They show that learning matters more than protecting an image. This creates a culture where failure is treated as feedback rather than shame, encouraging growth and continuous improvement. Vulnerability requires emotional awareness. Leaders must be willing to notice their own fear, discomfort, and defensiveness and choose response over reaction. This self-awareness prevents power from being used to silence or dominate and instead channels it toward understanding and alignment. Perhaps the greatest strength of vulnerable leadership is its humanity. People want to follow leaders they can relate to, not idealize. When leaders share challenges appropriately, they normalize struggle and resilience. They show that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to lead despite it. Leading without armor is not easy. It demands humility, self-trust, and resilience. But the reward is powerful, deeper trust, stronger teams, and leadership that inspires rather than intimidates. Vulnerability is not a risk to leadership. It is the very thing that makes leadership real, credible, and lasting. Empathy is the leader's greatest strength. Empathy is often misunderstood in leadership. It is sometimes dismissed as being too soft, too emotional, or incompatible with high performance. But empathy is not about lowering standards or avoiding hard conversations. It is about understanding people well enough to lead them effectively. In reality, empathy is not a weakness in leadership. It is one of its greatest strengths. Empathy begins with listening, not fixing. Many leaders feel pressure to solve problems quickly, to offer answers, or to move on to the next task. Empathetic leadership pauses. It asks, what is this person experiencing? Before asking, what needs to be done? This pause communicates respect. It tells people that they are valued not just for their output, but for their humanity. When leaders practice empathy, they see beyond performance metrics. They recognize signs of burnout, disengagement, or fear before they turn into crisis. Empathy allows leaders to respond proactively rather than reactively. A simple check in a moment of understanding or flexibility during difficult times can prevent long-term damage to morale and trust. Empathy also strengthens accountability. When people feel understood, they are more open to feedback. Hard conversations land differently when they are rooted in care rather than control. An empathetic leader can say, "I care about you, and that's why this conversation matters," instead of using authority to force compliance. This approach leads to growth rather than resentment. In moments of conflict, empathy becomes essential. Conflict is inevitable wherever people work together. Empathetic leaders resist the urge to take sides immediately. They listen to multiple perspectives and seek understanding before judgment. This creates fairness and reduces defensiveness, allowing teams to move forward with clarity and mutual respect. Empathy also fuels inclusion. When leaders are curious about experiences different from their own, they create spaces where diverse voices feel welcome. People are more likely to contribute ideas, challenge assumptions, and innovate when they believe their perspective matters. Empathy doesn't dilute leadership, it expands it. Importantly, empathy must be paired with boundaries. Empathy does not mean absorbing everyone else's emotions or avoiding decisions. It means caring deeply while remaining grounded. Leaders can be compassionate and decisive at the same time. In fact, empathy often makes decisions clearer because they are informed by real human impact. The most respected leaders are not remembered for being the smartest or most powerful in the room. They are remembered for how they made people feel seen, heard, and valued. Empathy creates loyalty that no incentive can buy and trust that no authority can demand. Empathy allows leaders to connect, and connection is where influence truly begins. Imperfection makes leadership relatable. For a long time, leadership has been wrapped in the myth of perfection. Leaders are expected to be decisive at all times, emotionally steady, and free from mistakes. This expectation creates pressure, not just for leaders, but for everyone around them. When perfection is the standard, fear becomes the culture. People hide errors, avoid risks, and silence honest conversations. Ironically, the pursuit of perfection weakens leadership rather than strengthening it. Imperfection, when owned with integrity, makes leadership relatable. Leaders who acknowledge that they are learning, growing, and sometimes struggling send a powerful message: progress matters more than perfection. This doesn't erode respect, it builds it. People trust leaders who are real over leaders who are flawless. When leaders pretend to be perfect, they create distance. Teams may admire them, but they won't feel safe with them. Admiration keeps people quiet, safety invites participation. Relatable leaders replace fear with openness. They show that mistakes are not moral failures, but part of meaningful work. Admitting imperfection requires humility, and humility is a cornerstone of strong leadership. It allows leaders to receive feedback without defensiveness and to grow alongside their teams. Leaders who model learning create cultures where curiosity is valued and innovation is encouraged. People are more willing to experiment when they know mistakes will be met with accountability and understanding rather than shame. Imperfection also humanizes power. Power without humanity can feel intimidating, but when leaders openly reflect on lessons learned, acknowledge challenges, and share responsibility for setbacks, power becomes approachable. People don't feel talked down to, they feel partnered with. Relatable leadership also helps manage expectations. When leaders acknowledge uncertainty, they prepare teams for reality rather than fantasy. This honesty builds resilience. Teams learn to adapt instead of crumble when things don't go as planned. They understand that leadership is not about avoiding failure, but about navigating it well. There is also deep strength in repairing mistakes publicly. Leaders who apologize sincerely and make amends demonstrate accountability and emotional maturity. These moments often strengthen trust more than perfection ever could. They show that leadership is not about being right all the time, but about doing the right thing when it matters most. Imperfection does not mean lack of standards. High-performing teams can exist alongside human leadership. The difference is that standards are enforced with clarity and care rather than fear. People rise to expectations when they feel respected and supported. In the end, people don't need perfect leaders. They need leaders who are honest, humble, and human. Imperfection makes leadership relatable, and relatability is what turns influence into impact. Courageous leaders create safe spaces. A truly courageous leader is not measured by how much control they hold, but by how safe others feel in their presence. Safe spaces do not happen by accident. They are intentionally created by leaders who choose courage over comfort and openness over defensiveness. In these environments, people are not afraid to speak, question, disagree, or admit mistakes. And that safety becomes the foundation for trust, creativity, and growth. Psychological safety begins with leadership behavior. People closely watch how leaders respond when something goes wrong. Do they blame or do they get curious? Do they shut down disagreement or invite dialogue? When leaders react with anger, ridicule, or silence, fear spreads quickly. But when leaders respond with calm, respect, and accountability, safety grows. Creating safe spaces requires leaders to regulate their own emotions. Courageous leadership means pausing before reacting, especially in moments of stress. It means being aware of how tone, body language, and words impact others. Leaders who manage their emotional responses create environments where people feel respected, even during difficult conversations. Safe spaces also depend on clear expectations. Courageous leaders set boundaries and standards openly, not through intimidation or guesswork. People feel safer when they know what is expected of them and how feedback will be handled. Transparency reduces anxiety and builds confidence. One of the most powerful ways leaders create safety is by welcoming dissent. Innovation does not thrive in echo chambers. Courageous leaders actively invite different perspectives and reward honesty, even when it challenges their own ideas. When people know they won't be punished for speaking up, they contribute more fully. Safe spaces also allow for healthy failure. Leaders who treat mistakes as learning opportunities rather than moral failures foster resilience. This doesn't mean lowering standards, it means separating behavior from identity. People can take responsibility for errors without being shamed, which encourages growth and accountability. Another critical element of safety is inclusion. Courageous leaders notice who is being heard and who is being overlooked. They amplify quieter voices and create room for diverse experiences. Inclusion sends a clear message: you belong here. And belonging strengthens commitment and performance. Perhaps most importantly, safe spaces are built through consistency. Trust is not created by one kind moment, it is built through repeated actions. When leaders consistently show respect, listen deeply, and respond fairly, people relax into authenticity. They stop performing and start contributing. Safe leadership does not mean easy leadership. It requires bravery, self-awareness, and ongoing effort. But the payoff is extraordinary. Teams become more engaged, more innovative, and more resilient. Courageous leaders don't demand loyalty. They earn it by making people feel safe enough to be real. Humanity is the foundation of lasting impact. Leadership is often judged by immediate results, targets met, growth achieved, numbers improved. While outcomes matter, they do not tell the full story of leadership. The most powerful leaders are not remembered solely for what they accomplished, but for how they made people feel and what they left behind. Humanity is the foundation of lasting impact because it shapes culture, not just outcomes. Human-centered leadership recognizes that people are not resources to be managed, but individuals to be developed. When leaders lead with empathy, integrity, and authenticity, they influence how people treat one another long after the leader is gone. This is impact that endures. Strategies may change, systems may evolve, but culture shaped by human leadership remains. The leaders who prioritize humanity invest in people, not just performance. They mentor, encourage, and challenge with care. They see potential before it's fully realized and support growth through trust rather than fear. Over time, this investment multiplies. People who feel valued pass that value forward. They become leaders who lead with the same respect and compassion they received. Humanity also strengthens resilience. In times of uncertainty, change, or crisis, people look to leaders not just for direction, but for reassurance and steadiness. Leaders who are emotionally present help teams navigate difficulty without losing hope or connection. They acknowledge fear without amplifying it and offer clarity without false certainty. Lasting impact also comes from ethical leadership. Leaders who lead with humanity consider the consequences of decisions on real people, not just metrics. They choose integrity even when shortcuts are tempting. This consistency builds credibility and trust that no amount of success can replace. Human leadership fosters belonging. When people feel they belong, they commit deeply. They care about the work, the team, and the mission. This sense of belonging drives engagement, creativity, and loyalty. People don't just show up for a paycheck, they show up because they feel connected to something meaningful. Perhaps the most powerful evidence of human leadership is what happens when the leader steps away. Do people feel empowered or lost? Do they continue to support one another? Leaders who lead with humanity leave behind capable, confident teams who can thrive independently. That is true impact. In the end, leadership is not about being remembered as the strongest voice in the room. It is about being remembered as the leader who made others stronger. Humanity is not a soft skill. It is the legacy that defines great leadership. Conclusion, the most powerful leaders are human. Leadership at its core is not about authority, control, or perfection. It is about people. Titles may grant influence, but humanity earns trust. When leaders choose to show up as real, imperfect, and emotionally present, they create connections that go far deeper than policies or procedures. These connections become the foundation upon which trust, loyalty, and shared purpose are built. The most powerful leaders understand that strength is not diminished by empathy or honesty. It is amplified by it. When leaders embrace vulnerability, they give others permission to do the same. Vulnerability does not weaken leadership. It strengthens it by replacing fear with openness and defensiveness with dialogue. It allows teams to move beyond surface level performance and into meaningful collaboration. Leaders who are willing to say, I don't have all the answers, create cultures where learning, innovation, and growth are possible. In these environments, people feel valued not just for what they produce, but for who they are. Human leadership also transforms how mistakes and challenges are handled. Instead of blame and silence, there is accountability and learning. Instead of burnout and disengagement, there is compassion and resilience. Leaders who model empathy and self-awareness teach their teams that imperfection is not a liability, it is a shared human experience. This understanding fosters psychological safety, where people feel confident enough to take risks, speak up, and contribute their best ideas. The impact of human-centered leadership extends far beyond immediate results. While outcomes matter, the way those outcomes are achieved matters even more. Leaders who lead with humanity-shaped cultures that outlast them. They develop people who are confident, resilient, and capable of leading with integrity themselves. Long after strategies change and goals evolve, the values of trust, respect, and connection remain. As you move forward in your own leadership journey, remember this: you do not have to choose between being strong and being human. Your humanity is your strength. Lead with courage, listen with empathy, and show up with authenticity. That is how real influence is built and how lasting change is made. Thank you for your time, your presence, and your willingness to reflect on what leadership truly means. May you lead boldly, compassionately, and humanly. Goodbye, and keep leading with heart.